I was 28 when I finally decided to walk away. Not from my job, at least not just that, but from the family dynamic that had been weighing me down for most of my adult life. My name's Eric, and up until a few years ago, I was the classic oldest son trying to please everyone. Keep the peace, be the responsible one, show up for everyone else even when no one showed up for me. You know the type. I had a decent job at a mid-sized tech firm, nothing fancy, but solid pay, stable hours, and the illusion of growth. The kind of place that dangles a promotion just far enough to keep you loyal, while slowly draining the life out of you. And I might have stayed there, kept grinding, kept playing their game, if it weren't for one conversation that flipped everything. But before I get there, I should talk about my family. Because if you really want to understand why that moment mattered so much, you need to understand where I came from. I grew up in a family where appearances meant everything. My dad was a small-town lawyer, sharp suit, polished shoes, always had a firm handshake and a story to tell. My mom was the type to host book club meetings with wine that cost more than our weekly groceries, just to keep up appearances with her friends. And then there was my younger brother, Derek, golden boy, family favorite, and professional gaslighter in a varsity jacket. Derek was 3 years younger than me, but from the moment he hit high school, the world revolved around him. Straight A's, captain of the football team, early acceptance into a top-tier college. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid with average grades and a knack for fixing things that no one ever noticed. When I got my first job offer out of college, my parents barely acknowledged it. But when Derek got an internship at some startup with an edgy name and a ping-pong table in the lobby, my mom threw a dinner party. It wasn't outright cruelty, not at first. Just little things. My dad introducing Derek to his colleagues as the real star of the family. My mom brushing off my job as something Eric's doing until he finds his path. Derek calling me boring responsible Eric, like it was some kind of affectionate insult. I laughed it off for years. Told myself they didn't mean anything by it. But when you hear something enough times, it starts to stick. By the time I hit 27, I had worked my way into a senior analyst role at the tech firm. I wasn't making six figures or running departments, but I had a team under me, a few successful projects, and a decent reputation in the industry. Still, every holiday dinner turned into a highlight reel of Derek's life. He had switched jobs 3 times in 2 years and somehow failed upwards each time. My parents called it being ambitious. When I mentioned staying at one company to build experience, my dad said, "That's nice, Eric. Some people just like security, I suppose." But the worst part? They always made me feel like I was ungrateful if I ever brought any of it up. "You're too sensitive. We're just proud of both our boys in different ways. Don't be jealous of your brother's success." I wasn't jealous. I just wanted to be seen, to be heard. The final crack came last Thanksgiving. We were all at my parents' house, me, Derek, his new girlfriend, some influencer with a 3-word name, and our parents. I had just wrapped up a big product launch at work, something that took months of planning and had landed us a new long-term client. I was proud of it, actually proud. So I mentioned it during dinner, casually, thinking maybe it'd lead to something other than silence. But instead, Derek put down his fork and said, "Wow, so you finally did something impressive at that little desk job of yours." He laughed. So did his girlfriend. I looked at my parents, expecting, I don't know, something. A glance, a scold. Maybe a "that wasn't nice, Derek." But my mom just reached for the wine and said, "Oh, he's just teasing." And my dad? He gave me this half smile and said, "Well, maybe now you'll get that raise you've been hoping for." I didn't say anything for the rest of dinner. I couldn't. Something in me just snapped. It was like I saw the last 20 years of my life in a flash. All the times I stayed quiet, played it safe, let them walk over me while convincing myself I was taking the high road. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, feeling this weird mix of anger and shame. I wasn't even mad at Derek, not really. He was who he was. I was mad at myself. For allowing it. For shrinking so they'd be comfortable. For thinking that if I just worked hard enough, they'd eventually respect me. 2 weeks later, I got an offer from a competitor. A director-level position. Higher pay, better title, more autonomy. I didn't even apply. They'd heard about my work from the launch and reached out. For the first time in years, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office to give my 2 weeks' notice. He was a decent guy, but a little too used to people sticking around for scraps. When I told him I was leaving, he actually laughed. "You'll regret this," he said, leaning back in his chair. "You'll never find something better." I didn't even respond. I just smiled, shook his hand, and walked out. 2 weeks later, I was onboarding at the new company. But the real story didn't start until a few months later, when the dust settled, when I started showing up to industry events with a title that turned heads, when people who used to ignore my emails were now asking for coffee meetings. I felt like I had stepped into an alternate version of my life, one where I was finally allowed to take up space. And then I got the invite. A tech conference, big-name speakers, company booths, networking dinners. I was scheduled to speak on a panel about product innovation. It was a huge opportunity. I was prepping for it in the green room when I saw the attendee list. My old company was sending people, and one of them was my old boss. What I didn't know yet, what would flip everything upside down, was that someone else from my family would be there too. Someone who had no idea I'd be attending, and who was about to learn just how much my life had changed. That's when everything really started to unravel. But I'll get to that. Because before the conference, before the confrontation, before the revenge that would leave my entire family stunned, there was one last dinner. And at that dinner, someone crossed a line they could never uncross. 2 weeks before the conference, I flew home for my mom's birthday. I almost didn't. Things had been weird since Thanksgiving, and I hadn't exactly kept in touch. But she called, said she missed me, said she wanted the whole family together for one night. No drama, she promised. Just dinner, Eric. I should have known better. From the moment I walked in, it was like I had stepped back into the role they'd assigned me years ago. Quiet Eric. The afterthought. Derek and his girlfriend Ashley. Yes, that was her name. I finally remembered. We're already there, sitting on the couch and scrolling through photos on her phone. My dad was pouring drinks, and my mom was fussing over the table. I brought flowers. No one noticed. Dinner started with champagne. Derek had just closed on a condo, apparently. I don't know how, since he switched jobs again, and I was fairly certain he was still bouncing between marketing gigs like they were seasonal hobbies. But there he was, bragging about how it was in a historic district, how he got in early, how his boss said he was the most visionary hire they'd had. His boss, by the way, was 2 years younger than me. My parents were glowing. My mom kept touching his shoulder like he'd just cured cancer. My dad raised his glass. To Derek, the pride of the family. I didn't even touch mine. Halfway through the meal, Derek turned to me with a smirk. "So, Eric, how's the little analyst job going?" I paused. "I don't work there anymore." That got their attention. My mom looked up, fork halfway to her mouth. "What? When did that happen?" 3 months ago. I took a director role at Silver Point Tech. I'm heading a new product division. Silence. Silver Point, for context, was the rising star in the industry, and the biggest threat to my old firm, the one I had just left. My dad blinked. Derek looked like I had spoken in another language. My mom's voice was clipped. "You didn't tell us." "No," I said. "I didn't." "Well, congratulations," she said, but the tone was all wrong. Polite. Flat. Like I had just announced I'd won a scratch-off ticket, not landed a career-changing job. Derek snorted into his glass. "Director?" he said, dragging the word out. "Wow, didn't know you were into titles now. Next thing you'll tell us you've got a private jet." I smiled thinly. "Not yet, but I do fly business class now." It was petty, I'll admit that, but it felt good. For about 5 seconds. Until my mom cut in. "You know, Eric, that's not really appropriate. No need to make this into a competition. Derek's worked very hard, too." I stared at her. I didn't say he hadn't. But the mood had shifted. My dad was already changing the subject, asking Ashley about her brand partnerships. Derek went right back into brag mode, talking about the condo again, how the ceilings were vaulted and how the neighborhood had artisan butchers and a wine co-op. I excused myself to the kitchen to help clear the plates. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to breathe. And that's when I saw it. On the fridge, held up by a novelty magnet, was a printed invitation. A formal one. To the Tech Lead Summit in San Diego. With Derek's name on it. I stared at it for a long time. Not because he was going, but because I recognized the invitation. I had received the exact same one. The same font, same logo, same colors. Only my name had been listed as a speaker. Derek's was listed under guest. That's when I realized. He was going too. To the conference. To my conference. I took a photo of it when no one was looking. Just in case. The rest of the night blurred. I barely spoke. Every time Derek laughed, it grated on my nerves. Every time my parents leaned toward him with that warm, indulgent look they never gave me, it chipped away at something inside me. But I stayed quiet, because that's what I'd always done. Until the next morning. I woke up early, packed my things, and came downstairs to find my mom making coffee. She didn't say good morning. Just, "Are you really not staying for brunch?" "I have a meeting tomorrow," I said. "I need to prep." She nodded, then looked at me over the rim of her mug. "Eric, I hope you're not holding a grudge about last night. Your brother's just excitable." "I'm not mad about last night." "Good. I'm mad that you keep pretending like it's nothing." She blinked. "Excuse me. Derek belittles me every time I'm here." "You let him." "Dad lets him. You call it teasing, but it's not. He talks to me like I'm a joke, and you act like I should be flattered." She didn't answer. "You know I'm speaking at the Tech Lead Summit," I said. "Did you even look at the email I sent a few weeks ago?" "I don't remember getting an email." I laughed. "I sent it to the family group." You replied with a thumbs up. Her lips pressed together. "I saw the invite on your fridge," I added. "He's going. Derek's going. And you never even said congratulations to me." "Not really. He was invited by his company," she said quietly. "He's attending. I'm speaking. But sure, let's act like we're equals." "Eric." "No, Mom. I'm tired of this. I worked my ass off to get where I am. No one handed it to me. And I'm done pretending that your silence doesn't hurt." There was a long pause. Then she said, "You've always been so sensitive." And just like that, I knew I was done. I left without saying goodbye to Derek or my dad. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on preparing for the summit. My panel was slotted right before the keynote, which meant high visibility. I was nervous, but excited. It felt like everything I'd worked for was finally coming together. My boss had even hinted that, if it went well, I might be offered a larger team. Maybe even a full department by Q3. 2 days before the conference, I got a LinkedIn notification. Derek Whitmore has updated his profile. I clicked out of habit and froze. He had added a new line under Speaking Engagements. Panelist, Tech Lead Summit 2025, San Diego. I read it 3 times. Then I checked the schedule. His name wasn't there. I called my contact at the summit committee, someone I had built a good rapport with. I didn't say much, just asked if the speaker list had changed. "Nope," she said. "You're still the only Whitmore on stage." "What?" "No reason," I said. "Just making sure." I sat in silence for a long time after that. Because I knew exactly what was happening. Derek was going to show up. Pretend to be a speaker. Work the room. Use my panel as a platform to network. Probably even drop our last name in conversations as if he were me. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Not out of fear, but something sharper. Rage. Years of being ignored, minimized, dismissed. Years of being told I was too sensitive, too quiet, too safe. And now, my brother was using my name, my success, as his ticket into a world I had bled to reach. And the worst part? I was pretty sure my parents knew, that they had encouraged it. Because in their eyes, it didn't matter which son was on stage, as long as it reflected well on them. The morning of the conference, I flew in early, checked into the hotel, ironed my suit, went over my talking points, and then I waited, because I had a plan. And when Derek arrived, grinning, confident, wearing a badge that didn't belong to him, I was ready. I didn't confront Derek the moment he arrived at the Tech Lead Summit. I wanted to, but I didn't, because something in me had changed. Years ago, I would have cornered him in the lobby, demanded he explain himself, maybe even walked away before the panel out of sheer frustration. But I wasn't that person anymore. Instead, I watched. He walked in wearing a navy blazer a size too tight, slicked back hair, and his signature smirk. Ashley trailed behind him, snapping selfies in front of every sponsor banner. Derek's badge hung confidently from a blue lanyard around his neck. I knew instantly that it wasn't his. The name said David Williams, but the picture had been replaced. Poor David, whoever he was, probably had no idea his face had been torn off a badge by someone who considered Photoshop a personality trait. Derek spotted me from across the exhibit floor. He waved like we were old pals. I gave a slight nod and turned back to the conversation I was having. He didn't approach. Not yet. The hours leading up to my panel passed in a blur. I met other speakers, went over logistics with the event staff, double-checked my slides. Everyone was buzzing about the audience size, 400 people in the room, not to mention the live stream to thousands of attendees who couldn't travel. It was the kind of opportunity that could change a career. And yet, my stomach was in knots. Not from nerves. Well, not entirely. It was the knowledge that Derek was somewhere out there, pretending to be part of something he hadn't earned. And worse, that my own family probably saw nothing wrong with it. I gave my talk. I nailed it. I spoke about innovation cycles, cross-functional collaboration, scaling niche products. But I also told a story, mine. I didn't name names, but I talked about working in a place where I was underestimated. About the pressure of being the quiet one in a family of loud voices. About learning to find power in stillness and value in substance over noise. People applauded. A few even stood. I stepped off that stage feeling like I had just shed the last layer of the skin I used to wear. The version of me who stayed quiet, who waited to be noticed, who sought approval from people who never planned to give it. Then came the moment I hadn't planned for. I was at the networking mixer later that evening, sipping club soda and talking to a recruiter from a massive firm, when Derek slithered up beside me. "There he is," he said, clapping a hand on my back like we were teammates. "The star of the show." I turned. "You shouldn't be here." He raised an eyebrow. "Relax. I'm just networking." "Using someone else's badge?" He grinned. "It's a conference, Eric. Everyone stretches the truth a little." "That's not true stretching," I said. "That's fraud." He rolled his eyes. "You're being dramatic." I stepped back. "Don't follow me around. Don't attach yourself to my name. And when people ask what you do, maybe try telling the truth for once." He laughed. "You really think they care? You think any of these people are going to remember the difference between us?" "I do," I said. "And I think that's enough." He opened his mouth to say something else, but I walked away. I didn't see him for the rest of the evening. And then, just like that, it was over. I flew home the next morning and returned to my routine. My job, my team, my goals. But something felt off. At first, it was subtle. A sudden quiet from my parents. Calls that went unanswered. Messages that got polite one-word replies. Then, the silence turned into something louder. One Saturday, I opened Facebook and saw a photo my mom had posted. Derek, standing on a stage at what looked like a small community tech event. The caption read, "So proud of our son for sharing his insights as a keynote speaker this weekend. A rising star." I didn't comment. I didn't like it. Instead, I messaged her privately. "Why are you pretending Derek is some industry expert?" She replied, "He's doing amazing things, Eric. You should be happy for him." I asked, "Are you ever going to be proud of me?" No reply. That was the moment I truly hit bottom. Not because of Derek. Not because of some lie he told on a fake badge. But because I realized the thing I'd been chasing my whole life, validation from my family, was never going to come. They had chosen who they wanted to believe in. And it wasn't me. I didn't leave my apartment that weekend. I sat with the weight of it, the finality of knowing that no matter how far I climbed, no matter what I accomplished, I would always be the footnote in someone else's story to them. I felt hollow, like my success didn't count if they didn't care. But somewhere in that silence, something else began to form. A new question. What if their pride wasn't the point anymore? What if I stopped measuring myself with a ruler they never meant to hand me in the first place? On Monday, I walked into the office early. Earlier than usual. My manager caught me in the hallway and smiled. "That panel was phenomenal, Eric," she said. "I've been hearing about it nonstop." "Thanks. We've been talking upstairs," she continued. "And we want to expand the pilot project you've been leading. Double the scope. Full team under you." I blinked. "Really? Really?" she said. "You've proven yourself." For once, I didn't doubt it. I didn't ask, "Are you sure?" Or "Do you think I'm ready?" I just nodded and said, "I'd love to." And I meant it. The next few months were a blur of progress. I hired new staff, held strategy meetings, led initiatives that got noticed by upper leadership. The internal newsletter featured our project 3 times in 2 months. Recruiters started messaging me weekly. I felt unstoppable. But more than that, I felt seen. Not by my parents, not by Derek, but by the people who mattered now, my team, my peers, the colleagues who had watched me rise from quiet analyst to director with a voice. I started mentoring junior employees. I spoke at 2 more conferences. I was invited onto a podcast to talk about product strategy and leadership in fast-scaling companies. And slowly, the hollow part inside me started to fill, not with validation, but with clarity. I realized that I didn't need revenge to feel whole. But that didn't mean I wasn't going to get it. Because just when I thought I had moved on, a package arrived at my office. No return address. Inside was a glossy, printed brochure, Derek's new consulting firm, complete with a stock photo headshot, a list of exaggerated achievements, and, my favorite part, a quote that read, "Helping clients unlock innovation through real industry experience." He had listed the Tech Lead Summit under his credentials again. Only this time, he claimed he was a featured guest speaker. I nearly laughed. But what really caught my attention was the back of the brochure. A list of companies he claimed to have collaborated with. And one of them was mine. My company. That's when I knew it was time. Not to prove anything to my parents. Not to win some imaginary competition. But to draw a line. Because Derek had finally crossed into my world. And this time, he dragged my name with him. So I did what I do best. I started planning. Quietly. Strategically. No emotion. No confrontation. Just a well-timed series of moves that would show everyone, not just Derek, but the people he was trying to impress, exactly what happened when you built your success on someone else's shoulders. I wasn't looking for payback anymore. I was looking for truth. And the truth was about to come out. I stared at that glossy brochure like it was a mirror into the past. The photo of Derek, chin tilted up, arms crossed like some corporate messiah. The list of buzzwords, disruptive innovation, thought leadership, scaling frameworks, words I use daily in my line of work, now butchered into empty jargon on a mailer he probably handed out like business cards at hotels. The claims he made were bold. Too bold. One line stood out more than the rest. Former keynote speaker at Tech Lead Summit and product strategist for Silver Point Tech. My company. My title. My work. This wasn't some little white lie to get into a mixer. Derek was using my career like a prop. And worse, he was using my company's name to land his so-called clients. If I did nothing, it could reflect poorly on me. It could look like I endorsed him. That was the moment I felt the shift again. Not just anger, but something colder, more focused. The difference between rage and resolve. I opened my laptop. First thing I did was take a screenshot of every page in the brochure. Then I checked the website listed on the back. Of course, it was filled with half-baked blog posts, inflated testimonials, and stock photos of handshakes. One blog post titled "The Power of Silent Leadership" was eerily familiar. Too familiar. Because it was a paraphrased version of a talk I had given at the Tech Lead Summit. He'd plagiarized me. Not even subtly. I cross-referenced the timestamps. My video had gone up 2 weeks before his blog post had been published. Same bullet points, same story structure, even the same phrasing in places. I was done, but I wasn't going to call him out in a text or family dinner. That never worked. No, I wanted something cleaner, smarter, something that left no room for denial, and something that, for once, he wouldn't see coming. So I started with the legal route. I pulled in Marlene, one of the sharpest in-house counsels at Silver Point. I'd only worked with her once before on a vendor contract, but I remembered how she dissected a licensing agreement like a surgeon. I scheduled a private meeting, laid everything out, screenshots, URLs, the brochure. She listened silently, flipping through the pages, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she looked up and said, "This is bad. You think he's actually gotten business out of this?" "Doesn't matter," she said. "The implication alone is risky. If he claims affiliation with us, and something goes wrong with a client, our name could be pulled into it." "Exactly." She nodded slowly. "I'll draft a cease and desist, and a letter clarifying our disassociation. Do you want your name on it?" I paused. "Not yet." She gave me a knowing look. "Keeping your powder dry?" "Something like that." By the end of the day, we had a document ready, a formal cease and desist letter, along with a statement to be used if we had to go public. But I didn't send it. Not immediately. Because this wasn't just about stopping Derek. It was about revealing him. Publicly. Permanently. So I dug deeper. I reached out to one of my old contacts at the Tech Lead Summit Committee, Laura, a fellow speaker and part of the planning board. I told her what was going on, showed her the brochure, the website, the doctored photos. Her reaction was instant. "Oh my God, Eric. I remember him. That guy who kept hanging around backstage." "Yup. He tried to get into the speaker dinner, didn't he?" "He did. He told the staff he was my co-presenter." She groaned. "That explains so much. I had to vouch for you because they were confused about which Whitmore was supposed to be on the list." I felt my jaw tighten. He's using the summit name now, telling people he was a keynote speaker. Let me guess. No credentials, no speaking slot, No record. None. Lara's tone shifted. Do you want us to issue a public correction? I shook my head. Not yet. I need to line everything up first. And that's exactly what I did. Over the next few weeks, I started building my case. Quietly, methodically, like laying out a chessboard. I reached out to 3 of the companies Derek claimed to have collaborated with. Only one responded, but the answer was telling. Never heard of him, the email said. We've never worked with any consulting agency under that name. Then, by pure coincidence, or maybe karma, a former coworker of Derek's messaged me on LinkedIn. Hey, this is random, she wrote, but I saw your name on a podcast and realized your brother used to name drop you all the time at happy hour. He claimed he trained you back when he was in product dev. Funny. Huh? Funny wasn't the word I'd use. But now I had a pattern, a track record, and just enough receipts to put something bigger together. I booked another call, this time with an old classmate from grad school who had gone into investigative journalism. We weren't close, but we'd always respected each other's work. Her name was Jaya, and she specialized in business exposés, scams, fake credentials, pyramid schemes. The works. I sent her everything. At first, she was hesitant. Is this personal, Eric? It started that way, I said. But now it's professional. He's using false affiliations to build a business. He's naming real companies, misrepresenting public events, plagiarizing intellectual property. She asked for 2 days. I gave her 4. When she called me back, she was breathless. I found more. She had uncovered a fake testimonial on Derek's website, attributed to a VP at a fintech firm that didn't exist. The photo used was a filtered LinkedIn headshot of someone else entirely, a guy named Alex Bingham who had no idea his face was being used. She also found a podcast where Derek had apparently interviewed himself, using a voice filter to pose as a client. It would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I want to run the story, Jaya said. A light piece, nothing defamatory. Just enough to raise questions. Can you time it? She paused. Time it for what? I need 3 weeks, I said. There's an event coming. And there was. Another tech conference, smaller, more regional, but still respectable. Silverpoint was sponsoring it, and I was scheduled to give the opening remarks. I had already seen Derek's name on the RSVP list. This time, he wasn't even pretending to speak. He had listed himself as press. The audacity. So I waited. 3 weeks. During that time, I made sure everything was in place. Marlene finalized the legal documents and cleared them for release. My company's comms team wrote up a statement clarifying that Derek Whitmore had no affiliation with Silverpoint and never had. Jaya sent me the draft of her article, a polished, damning piece about false branding, image manipulation, and the thin line between ambition and fraud. And finally, just to make sure, Laura from TechLead emailed me the final nail. An official letter from the TechLead Summit stating that Derek Whitmore had never spoken, presented, or been formally invited in any capacity beyond a guest pass. All that remained was the execution. The morning of the conference, I walked into the venue with a calm I hadn't felt in years. Derek was already there, laughing with some vendors, holding a press badge like it was a backstage pass to success. He hadn't seen me yet. Perfect. Because by the time he did, everything was going to change. The conference hall was buzzing with the kind of over-caffeinated energy you only get at tech events. Young founders in fitted blazers pitching ideas over stale pastries, product managers flipping through business cards like trading cards, and panels running 5 minutes behind while everyone pretended that was just startup culture. I didn't mind the chaos. It worked in my favor. Derek stood near the center of it all, confident as ever, his press badge swinging from his neck like it was a medal. He was talking to 2 junior reps from a mid-tier VC firm I recognized. I'd met them a month earlier at a closed-door pitch session, where I'd advised them on product viability metrics. I knew they respected me, and now, they were listening to my brother, the same brother who had used my credentials to build a house of cards, and who had no idea that every single card was about to come down. I could have walked up to him right then and there. I could have yanked the badge from his neck and embarrassed him in front of everyone. But that wasn't my style anymore. I didn't want a scene. I wanted something quieter, deeper, permanent. The first domino fell at 10:17 a.m. That's when Jaya's exposé went live. The false genius. How one man faked his way into the tech industry. It hit LinkedIn first, then Twitter, then Hacker News. Within 15 minutes, it was trending regionally. She had done her homework. Interviews, screenshots, audio clips from the fake podcast, even a side-by-side breakdown of Derek's plagiarized blog post versus my Tech Lead Summit speech. She hadn't used my name, per my request, but the references were obvious enough to anyone in our circle. The article ended with a simple line. In an industry built on innovation, credibility matters more than charisma. And sooner or later, the truth catches up. It didn't take long for the second domino to fall. At 10:32 a.m., the official Silverpoint statement went live on our company site. We are aware of individuals falsely claiming professional affiliation with Silverpoint Tech. These claims are categorically untrue. Silverpoint maintains no professional, contractual, or advisory relationship with Derek Whitmore. I timed my opening remarks for 10:45. By the time I took the stage, half the audience was already whispering. People were looking at their phones, their faces shifting from curiosity to confusion to disbelief. A few heads turned toward Derek, who was still planted in the crowd, blissfully unaware. I didn't call him out. I didn't have to. I delivered my speech as planned, focused, forward-thinking, sharp. I mentioned the importance of ethics in innovation, of building something real. I even referenced the value of earning trust the hard way. When I stepped down, people clapped, not just politely, but genuinely. And that's when I saw it. Derek, standing off to the side, mouth slightly open, eyes locked on mine. I nodded at him. Just once. Calm. Controlled. He started walking toward me. But before he reached me, he was intercepted. Two conference staff members stopped him. One of them was holding a printout. It was the email from the Tech Lead Summit team, the one confirming Derek had never been a speaker. The other staffer looked stern. Mr. Whitmore, we need to talk. I didn't stay to watch what happened next, because I didn't need to. The trap had been set. The truth had been laid out, piece by piece. All that was left now was the fallout. And oh, did it fall. By 2 p.m., Derek's consulting site had gone offline. By 4 p.m., two of the companies he'd approached as potential clients had issued formal statements denying any association. One of them tagged the expose in their tweet. By 6 p.m., Ashley had unfollowed him on every platform. I know because someone sent me the screenshots. Petty? Maybe. But satisfying. The next day, Derek's LinkedIn was wiped clean. Gone were the bold titles, the buzzword-laced bios. He had changed his headline to, "Looking for New Opportunities." The comments beneath it were brutal. Some sarcastic. Some just confused. A few people tagged Jaya's article. And my parents? That part wasn't as public. But in a way, it cut deeper. 3 days after the article dropped, I got a call from my mom. First one in weeks. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Eric, I don't know what to say. We didn't know it was this serious. He told us he was doing well, that you were helping him. We just wanted to believe he was finally getting his life together. I'm sorry. We're both sorry. I saved the message. I never responded. Because it wasn't about anger anymore. It was about boundaries. About not shrinking myself anymore to make space for people who refused to see me. And as for Derek, the last time I saw him, it was by accident. 6 months later, at a smaller tech event. He wasn't speaking. He wasn't even registered. He was manning a booth for a third-tier software reseller, wearing a tight polo shirt with someone else's logo on it. No badge. No smirk. Just quiet, tired eyes. He looked up, recognized me instantly. I didn't say a word. But he stood, walked over. Eric, he said quietly. Can we talk? I looked him dead in the eye. And I said, you're right, Derek. He blinked. About what? I do have regrets. His mouth opened slightly. And I finished. I regret not cutting you off 2 years sooner. Then I walked away. No second glance. No guilt. Just clarity. I built my life back brick by brick. I stopped seeking permission to be proud of myself. I stopped explaining my worth to people who only listened when it benefited them. I focused on my team, on the work, on the people who showed up. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet line spoken at the right moment. Sometimes it's success without apology. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's walking away from the people who underestimated you and letting them sit in the silence they created. I didn't win by destroying him. I won by finally choosing myself.